Hello, this is the chapter reading for Tapestry of Worlds Part 2, Running and Gunning. Prologue. The full moon rose in the east when Jim Standing Foot took the Whiskey Bay exit off Louisiana I-10. For 3 years now, Jim had been dumping the White Witch's trash at the small Cajun fishing town between Baton Rouge and Lafayette. Trash. At least that's how Jewel Du Bois referred to the corpses of the unlucky wretches who stumbled into her coven. Jim wouldn't complain too much, though. It wasn't like he minded the task, and in doing so, it allowed him a much-welcomed reprieve from his beloved wife, Rain. Since he married Rain, Jim did his best to deny his true nature. But on nights like this, when taking out the trash, Jim was free to let it out. Under the full moon at Whiskey Bay, he could make war on the white man, or roam the swamp hunting and eating raw flesh from the prey he caught. These nights at Whiskey Bay afforded him the luxury to be true to his primordial self, the secret self he kept hidden from his wife, a secret he would continue to keep until he found a kindred soul with whom he could share his penchant for blood and magic. You see, Jim was evil, rotten to the core. After years of torturing animals, he killed his first person when he was barely 12 years old. Jim hadn't planned it. He was playing Indians and cowboys with his litter brother when wondered what a tomahawk would do to a human skull. It wasn't malice. No, Jim split the boy's skull open just because he wanted to see what would happen. With his curiosity satisfied, Jim's mother came home to find him watching television. With his curiosity satisfied, his mother came home to find him watching television just like other day. When his mother started looking for his brother, she found his brother broken and discarded. The 9-year-old's head was smashed in, but once had not been enough. No, Jim wanted to experience the full wrath of the tomahawk. Seeing the boy broke his mother. In shock, the woman ran screaming from the broken-down trailer they lived and straight into the path of an 18-wheeler. She knew he was a monster. Kids on the reservation had it hard to begin with, but an orphan fared even worse. Of course, being labeled a kin killer didn't help. Jim bounced in and out of foster homes for 2 years before the old medicine woman, scar on the face, took him in. Later, the woman would tell him that the dark spirits had whispered his sins on the 4 winds, and she knew he was the one she was meant to teach, that in him she found the student she had been seeking. It surprised people on the res when the old woman took in Sour Jim. They whispered how kind the old woman was to teach him the healing ways of their people, and spoke of how he did not deserve such an honor. The old medicine woman had long parted ways with the White Lodge's teachings. Long ago, Scar on the Face had turned to the learnings of black magic and built a dark lodge facing west, a shadow lodge, a womb for nightmares. There she schooled Jim in the ways of darkness and fed his bloodlust. For 5 long years, Jim studied with Scar on the Face. In the light of day, they practiced the healer's rituals, and under the shroud of darkness, they killed together, shed skin together, and tormented all that stood in their way. Over the years, Jim formed an attachment for the old woman. That alone was more than he could say about how he felt for his mother. Jim stared into the distance, remembering the last day he saw her. It was a shame he had to kill the old woman, but Spirit had whispered he could take her power with the flick of his blade, and he had. And such was the way of change. He left the reservation then, and he headed east. He had bounced around the East Coast for some time, but it wasn't until he headed south that he found true anonymity. There, he was no longer subject to the white man's oppression. Across the Gulf Coast, in Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana, Jim worked in the oil fields. Transient and nomadic, no one ever connected him to the trail of bodies he left in his wake. All that had changed when he met Rain. The minute he saw her tending bar at the Louisiana coastal island where she lived, he had known she was different. Rain was the light in his darkness, his polar opposite in every way. That first night when she kissed him, Jim had experienced an innocence so pure and sweet that the darkness in him quelled. He would do anything to make her his woman and to keep her safe, even if it meant turning his back on his dark ways. The two married shortly after a small ceremony at the courthouse, followed by a party at the beachfront bar where they had met. Things had been good for a while. Life married to Rain was beautiful, but while Jim was working offshore, dark forces crept back into his life through no fault of his own doing. An orphan like Jim, Rain was looking for a connection. Like many young women, she felt a divine feminine call and was looking for like minds to occupy the young newlywed's mind while her husband was working. It was in an online chat room that she met Jewel Du Bois. Rain had told him she had been corresponding with Jewel via email and chat, but it wasn't until he came home from his latest offshore gig when he discovered their friendship was more. Rain explained how the couple was invited to a Samhain celebration at the woman's home in New Orleans. The Great Spirit whispered to stay away, and despite sensing the dark powers, Jim could not deny what she desired. When they entered the Garden District home in New Orleans, the crisp aroma of bleach met them at the door, but even it could not mask the pungent scent of blood, sex, and magic that hung in the air. Jim didn't mind, though. The odor reminded him of the Black Lodge. However, instead of the dirt floor and horse blanket at the lodge, Jewel's home was red velvet and black lace. Jim looked into Jewel's soulless eyes, and the recognition of dark sorcery and power was instant. And so, darkness re-entered Jim Standingfoot's life through the White Witch. The more time the married couple spent with Jewel, the more Jim's darkness needed to feed. When Jim realized the witch was draining her new husband's life force and magic, he wants it in. In the months that passed, Jewel took Jim further into her confidence and whispered about her employer and ushering in a new world. A world of darkness, chaos, and corruption. A place where he had a place at her side. Rain would have been just one more soul stolen by Jewel if not for him. The only thing that kept his wife safe now was Jewel's fear of him. He also knew he could not keep Rain safe from Jewel indefinitely. It would come down to him killing Jewel or Jewel killing him. If she opened the gate she planned to open, and even he might not be wily enough to destroy her. Yes, he thought with a tired sigh. He recognized enough of himself in Jewel to acknowledge the day was coming sooner rather than later. It was just a matter of waiting. As the sun fell behind the trees, he slapped his hand upon the black waters of the swamp. Jim smiled. He could feel this cursed place was already caught in the in-between, where the veil was thin. Quietly, he listened as the prehistoric behemoths smacked their tails on the water in response. The 3 alligators were swimming towards him in eager anticipation. The smallest one was 11 feet long, while the largest one was well over 18 feet. With a smile, Jim threw out the corpse's dismembered pieces with the familiarity and ease of a swamp tour guide, baiting the gators with raw chicken. As the waters churned and boiled with the feeding frenzy, he lit another camel and enjoyed the moment. Like the monsters thrashing in the water, his dark eyes shone red in the fading light of day, a testament to his primal nature. When Jim first started throwing the trash out here, he had noticed several smaller gators in addition to this thing. But over time, the larger gators consumed their smaller, weaker brethren. The Jurassic creatures were much like him. They lived only to kill, feed, and fuck. No emotion, no stress, just living day to day, growing more dangerous. Jim walked back to the car, taking one last drag off the cigarette before tossing it to the ground. He put it out with one grinding motion of his boot heel. Then, like a snake shedding its skin, he took off the black leather vest he wore along with his boots and jeans. The sun dropped on the horizon as a cool breeze came in off the water, stirring his long black hair. Nonchalantly, the big man pulled out the bag from the back seat. He unzipped the bag and pulled out a coyote skin. In one fluid motion, he threw it over his head as the big moon rose above the waterway and transformed. The creature's eyes glowed like cinders when he turned his face up to howl. Chapter 1. Day 1, Birmingham, Alabama. Sergeant First Class Jason Ransom McIlwain heard his cell phone ping, alerting him to a new text message. He grinned to himself, knowing it was his girlfriend Erica. He took a break from packing up his equipment to read it. Ransom grinned as he looked at the selfie she sent of herself dressed up for a party at her professor's house. He whistled low in admiration. Damn, that girl is something else. He sent her back a text before returning to packing. Not for the first time, he wished he were there with her, instead of checking his gear for this impromptu mission to parts unknown. More than beautiful, Erica had an ethereal look to her, with a mane of long black hair, bone-white skin, and electric gray-green eyes, that when she looked a certain way, he was sure they could cut you. He would be the first to say he noticed her because of her looks, but who wouldn't? She was a stunner, but good-looking girls were a dime a dozen, and Jason had a 5-year plan focused on meeting specific goals within his Army Ranger battalion. There was no room for dating, no matter how pretty the girl. But damn, if Erica had not changed all of that. She wasn't just a pretty face. She different from other girls. There was an otherworldly quality about her that drew him to her like the shores pulled to the ocean. It was like on some subconscious level, her spirit sang to him, a song of love that was haunting, mysterious, and pure. She made him feel foolish and romantic, and he couldn't help but feel like a teenager who could talk with a girl before he was with her. He loved how she saw the world, how she believed animals could speak, how she saw magic in the energy that flowed around her, and how she believed in fate, destiny, and serendipity. Folklore and ancient traditions she shared with him, many now he believed himself. Of course, if he was honest, it didn't hurt that she was a damn fine marksman, or that she loved to wander around the woods, mud ride, and rough house with him and the dogs without worrying about messing up her hair or getting dirty. Yep, his girl was the entire package, and he knew when he met her, he couldn't expect a woman like her to wait around for an ordinary Joe like him. So, he took a leap of faith, and a year later, here they are. During the last 12 months, she had started the academic track towards her PhD in folklore. In addition, one of her best friends was pregnant, and another recently married. He feared with her world evolving and with a sick mom at home, she needed something more substantial than what he was offering her. The girl needed and deserved a full-time partner in life, and he wanted to be that for her. Not that she complained, she never did. She said it did not bother her that he was missing the party tonight, but he could see the disappointment in her eyes when he called in at the last minute. He noticed the tone of her voice was different after he told her he had to leave, and for the first time in Ransom's life, he was afraid. It had taken him a hot minute to figure out why a little girl from Chimneyville, Mississippi, scared him when 2 deployments to Afghanistan and 1 to Central America hadn't. But that was when it hit him like a ton of bricks. He'd made it this far without worrying about what he was missing out at home, and now he got why the guys with families were different operators than the single guys. He had something to lose. Not that she scared him, life without her did. When he realized it, he knew then it was time for him to make some changes. His 5-year plan in the military had turned into 3 when he transitioned from active duty to a ranger unit in the Army Reserves. He was on track with his personal goals and qualified for all the certifications he was after. After this mission, He had another 8 months, and he was out for good. Erica didn't know yet, but when he got back, he was going to ask her to marry him. He had a ring picked out and everything. Hell, he thought with a smile, they already had 2 kids. Well, furry ones at least. Jason had gotten 2 German Shepherds to cross-train and sell to a friend with a small, underfunded police department. Erica had gotten one look at their furry mugs and fell in love. Not that he minded. The brother and sister pups were the best. It was just that they had bonded with him and Erica and would never work for anyone else. They were their little pack, and he was pretty content with that. Thank you.